If you have a story you'd like to hear featured on the channel, then go to mariesfield.com and send it my way. And of course, thank you. This took place several years ago. My parents used to own a few properties, and we went through a realty company to rent them out, mostly because it was easier for them to manage the property and just consult them for things that needed to be done. Basically, they would vet the potential tenants and send a list to my parents, who would give the final say. Then, if there was maintenance that was needed, they would contact contractors in the area for the maintenance, and we would pay the bill if it was over a certain amount. It was an odd setup, but honestly, it was kind of nice. They paid an annual contract fee to the realty company, they managed the tenant's request, and were supposed to be doing inspections of the property frequently. My parents held this arrangement for a few years. It only had a couple tenants in one house that they owned. The last tenants that they had seemed okay enough, but they had to cut the lease out early due to a family issue. There was something about them having to move out of state to be close to the family because one of them needed 24/7 care. Honestly, it was a noble enough cause, and my parents were elderly and were also pushovers, so they allowed them to terminate the lease with about 3 months left, and didn't pursue any fees that they would have been owed. I commend them for how they handled it. It was nice of them to let the tenant out of the lease. Around this time, however, my father was diagnosed with terminal cancer and was given less than 6 months to live, which obviously shifted any focus to him and his end-of-life care. Because of this, I'd worked with them to take over the contract of the rentals with the realty company so they didn't have to stress over it. When I got control, I contacted them and told them to try and vet any potential renters and that we would be hands-off for a while due to my father's condition. Basically, I told them to just collect the rent from the tenants and approve anything that wasn't too expensive or destructive to the property. They understood, said they would take care of it, and that they would keep the empty property in good condition in the meantime. I thanked them, and that was the last I thought about it for a while. My father did make it the full 6 months, but he ended up passing away one night in his sleep, which was probably the best way for that all to end. My mother and I took care of his funeral and got my mother back on track. Once everything was copacetic at home, I decided to contact the realty company after having not really spoken to them much in the past half year. I went ahead and got all the info on the tenants and they were vetting, and I got all the maintenance information, and then they told me that the empty property was in fact still empty and that they had been taking care of everything while I was away. Perfect, I thought, and since it was empty, I figured it was a good time to go ahead and do a walkthrough of the building myself to see what we could do to make the house better or possibly do some upgrades. After all, there were no tenants, so I didn't need to notify anyone, and I owned the property alongside my mother, so I could go in since it was empty. So I decided to go ahead and make the day trip out to the property. When I got there, I was a bit shocked. The lawn was completely dead. The railing on the front steps was completely destroyed, and the screen door was sitting on the porch by the front window. I went ahead and stepped toward the front door and went to unlock it when I realized it wasn't even locked, and there was no guard on the knob, which meant if they hadn't changed the locks, the previous tenants would have been able to come back anytime they wanted and enter the premises. The unlocked door told me that they probably had. When I opened the door and walked into the entryway, I was incredibly shocked. The living room still had furniture in it, The floor was covered in trash. There were holes in the walls all along the inside. And when I got to the kitchen, it was even worse. There was food in the fridge that had rotted, the sink was full of dishes, and the stove had been pulled out from the wall and seemingly smashed. The bathroom was even worse. The toilet was destroyed. There was human waste all over the floor. And worst of all, there were what looked like used needles filling the tub. Then I got to the bedroom. When I walked into the room, I could tell that someone was living there. There was trash everywhere, but there was also a bed that looked like it had been covered in blood and God knows what else. There were more needles everywhere. There was a pipe on the ground near the bed, and a candle was lit on what looked like an old dresser in the corner. As I was rifling around the random trash and items in the bedroom, I heard something come from the closet in the back. I went over and opened it, and there was seriously a little girl sitting in the closet in horribly soiled clothing, and she was sitting on a blanket with a pillow against the wall. I was seriously horrified. At first, I thought that my property was just being used as a drug house, but apparently it was being used as a drug house by someone with a child. I immediately called the police and asked them to send officers to the property. I explained to them what was going on, and as I was waiting for them, I decided to try to talk to the child and keep her calm. I asked her if her parents were home. She shook her head no. I asked her if she lived there. She shook her head yes. I asked her what her name was, and she mumbled something that I honestly couldn't make out. When the cops got there, they got the little girl out of the closet and into a cruiser, then did a full sweep of the place. To my surprise, her parents were home. They were both blacked out down in the basement. Apparently, they had left her up in the closet and went downstairs to shoot up heroin and were completely out when I came into the property. They were both arrested, obviously, and the little girl was taken into city custody to be checked out and, my guess, put with a foster family. Now, I know that drug addicts are sick, absolutely, and I know they don't always have control over their actions, but the state of this place was completely unlivable, and the fact that they kept a little girl in their closet was absolutely disgusting. I contacted the realty company and asked when the last time they were out at the property was, and to my surprise, they said they had been coming out once a week to make sure everything was okay. I then told them that I was at the property and it was trashed. They tried to walk it back and make up some excuse, but it was pretty obvious that they had just been ignoring the property entirely. In the end, I cut ties with that company, got the place cleaned up and upgraded, and then rented it to another tenant that actually still lives there today, 6 years later. I hope the parents of that little girl got the help they needed, but really, I hope more that the little girl got placed with a happy family that could give her the love that she deserved. Hello, my name is Summer. This is a true and horrifying scuba diving account of what happened to my two friends, Roger and Barry, and me one summer in July 2010. This story comes with a strong warning because it does have some frightening moments and violence. It's not for the squeamish, so if you want to skip it, please do so now. Thank you. Timestamps will also be provided in the description. To protect the privacy of my two male friends and myself, I will only give our first names out to you, not our last. My friend Roger was a good-looking guy with short brown hair and close-cropped brown beard on a slender but athletic body. He always kept us laughing with his humor. Barry, who was my boyfriend, was an African American male with a real muscular pro bodybuilder's physique. His bodybuilding idols were Arnold Schwarzenegger and Ronnie Coleman. Barry wanted to be a pro bodybuilder someday. As for myself, Summer, I had long, flowing blonde hair, big blue eyes on a bosomy and curvaceous figure. I wanted to be a swimsuit model and was lucky enough to model for some well-known swimsuit magazines already. Like Barry, we all liked to keep in shape and worked out at the gym often. We were all just 19 years old at the time, and we attended one of the California's top universities together. One of the groups we were all a part of was the Sea Otter Scuba Diving Club. It held many members, but Roger and my boyfriend Barry were my closest friends. We all loved the California Pacific Ocean marine life that included sea anemones, sea otters, giant sunfish, giant oceanic manta rays, sea lions, harbor seals, elephant seals, a variety of sharks, and many other sea creatures. The marine life in California's Pacific Ocean is some of the most beautiful in the world. When school was out for the summer, Roger, Barry, and I decided to get together and have some fun in looking for a very large fish named the Goliath grouper. The Goliath grouper can grow 6 to 8 feet and weigh up to 800 pounds. We wanted to catch this as a large trophy fish. We all got into our black wetsuits and had our spear guns with us and boarded one of our Sea Otter scuba diving boats, which was 40 feet long and had its own full bathroom, kitchen, and rooms. Roger had his own room and Barry and I shared a room. The boat also had its own phone system where we could contact another boat or contact the mainland in case of an emergency. Roger would stay on board the boat while my boyfriend Barry and I would hunt for the Goliath grouper. We did not plan to be gone for more than an hour because we only had an hour in our oxygen tanks. We heard that the Goliath grouper was always in season. High season is April to June, and low season is September to December. We all knew we had to be careful in these waters hunting for the Goliath grouper because it was near the Farallon Islands where the sea lions lived and had their nests. The seals and sea lions were killer whale and great white sharks' favorite food. Orcas were not known to attack humans in the wild, but great white sharks were another matter. Great whites were the largest predatory shark in the world, and they're not afraid to attack humans. Orca males grow around 30 feet while the females were 20 feet, while white sharks could grow up to 23 feet. However, most male white sharks are smaller, around 11 to 13 feet, with the female white sharks around 15 to 16 feet. Both orcas and great white sharks were top predators in the ocean, and we knew that we had to give them their space. Plus, like Robert Shaw's character Quint said in the classic Jaws movie, this shark can swallow you whole. Indeed it can, and has. I, myself, have many true shark attack books and have seen several photos of scuba divers dead on the slab, still in their wetsuit with a leg missing, probably from a great white shark attack. Indeed, the Farallon Islands was a dangerous area. It is actually called the Devil's Teeth, in reference to the many treacherous underwater shoals in their vicinity. The island lies 30 miles outside the Golden Gate and 20 miles south of Point Reyes and are visible from the mainland on clear days. The Farallons are part of the city and county of San Francisco. The only inhabited portion of the islands is on the southwest Farallon Island, where researchers from Point Blue Conservation Science and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service stay. The island is closed to the public. The Farallones have to be closed to the public with all the dangerous marine life near there. There can be no swimming, water skiing, and should be no scuba diving there either. But some brave divers do still scuba dive near there. Roger got us near the spot. Barry and I would dive as he stopped our boat. There was an elderly fisherman in the past year that told us that there were some top Goliath groupers to be spearfished in the area. So we were eager to try for one. We were actually close enough to the Farallon Islands to see it and to hear the many sea lions barking. What a loud racket they made. Barry and I said goodbye to Roger as we dove into the cool California water to search for the Goliath grouper. For safety reasons, Barry and I would stay in close proximity with each other in case something bad happened to either of us. After about a half hour, I saw Barry pop his head out of the water and signal to me that he saw a pretty rare in color pink Goliath grouper. The grouper of this kind was usually brown or grayish. The boat was not that far away from us, so I said I would follow Barry in the pursuit of this fish. But within 15 minutes of Barry saying this to me, I saw Barry come up high out of the water screaming, "Help me!" I looked under the water and, to my unbelieving eyes, it appeared that an enormous, heavy-bodied great white shark, the size of a female orca, had rammed into poor Barry. When I swam up to Barry, he said that he was bruised badly and dazed for a bit, but would be okay. He knew exactly what it was that rammed into him. Barry told me that the shark just hit him hard, never striking him with his jaws. He told me that the enormous male white shark chasing the pink Goliath grouper would probably dart back to check on us. So he suggested we hide behind the rock below in the tall seagrass. We were about 50 feet deep and not far from the Farallon Islands. Barry was right. No sooner than I got behind that big rock in the tall seagrass next to Barry to hide from the great white, the shark was back and looking for us. This great white male did look the size of a female orca, which are usually around 23 feet long, the size that the largest great whites grow to. Unfortunately, when the shark rammed Barry, he lost his spear gun, so we just had mine to work with. I was fearful that this great white was so enormous and powerful, one spear from my spear gun may not kill it. I was glad Barry was okay and not unconscious from being hit hard by the shark, but we needed the shark to leave fairly soon because we only had half an hour of oxygen left in our tanks, at best. This enormous beast was really looking for Barry and I, zigzagging to and fro. I think it wanted to really kill us for getting in the way of catching his big grouper meal. Finally, the shark left. Barry and I had to wait at least a minute or two to make sure it was gone before we rose to the surface and try to flag down our friend Roger to pick us up on the boat. But unfortunately, as soon as Barry and I rose to the surface, we saw the same shark in the distance. Even at a distance, the bulk of it was enormous. Barry and I could have been in this great white shark's territory, and we were in his hunting grounds. Great whites and other sharks are very territorial. Even though I was down much oxygen in my tank, I let some air bubbles loose to hide ourselves from the attacking shark. Maybe the many air bubbles would confuse it until we got back safely on the boat with Roger. Barry saw what I was doing and he let some oxygen air bubbles loose also as we swam towards where we hoped our boat was waiting for us. I looked behind me and was glad to see that the huge shark was not behind us, just a lot of bubbles from our oxygen tank. Barry and I knew without saying that this shark was the biggest and deadliest type of great white that was large enough to swallow a 6-foot man whole. We had to find and get on our boat fast. Our very lives depended on it. I looked back again and still did not see the shark, just the oxygen bubbles. Then I looked down below me, absent-mindedly, and I saw in horror the massive shark coming at us fast from below, with his mouth fully open. The great white and other sharks were the masters of stealth, and this one was showing it here. But I spotted it just in time as I aimed my spear gun towards it and pulled the trigger. The spear zoomed through the ocean water and went right in between the shark's open mouth. The spear must have hit the shark's vital organs because blood poured out of its mouth immediately as it thrashed its huge conical head from side to side. I hit the water surface first, and thankfully immediately saw Roger and his boat not far away and flagged him to come get us quickly. With all this blood in the water, there would be no doubt other sharks would be coming fast to investigate. Great white sharks in particular, since this was close to the Farallon Islands. But before Barry and I got on the boat, we saw a huge dorsal fin coming towards us fast. I was frightened. I didn't have my spear gun since the shark took it when I shot it. Barry and I then noticed to our relief that it was only a curious giant sunfish checking us out and not another huge great white. Sunfish eat jellyfish and small fish, algae, and zooplankton. They are harmless to humans, but they are often curious and will check divers out. When Barry and I got on the boat, Barry thanked me for saving him from the shark. Roger, Barry, and I all got together and hugged each other at the same time, grateful that we were all alive. The great white I shot was never seen again, so it's assumed I killed it with my spear gun. Barry and I were the only ones who saw the enormous white shark, so the size of it is not verified by the shark experts. But we both agree that it must have been at least 20 feet or more, with a gray body and a white belly. Some white sharks have a blue body and white belly, and some are brownish with white bellies. This shark encounter happened in the year 2010. There's not much information about all great white shark attacks in America in 2010. Afterwards, after our great white shark encounter, Roger, Barry, and I graduated our California university. Roger now works as a marine biologist. Barry did become a pro bodybuilder and works out often in Venice Beach, California, and I became a swimsuit model. A few times Barry and I even posed on the beach in fitness and bodybuilding magazines together. Roger, Barry, and I still scuba dive, but we are all much safer with it now. We never scuba near the Farallons with all the sea lions. That's just asking for trouble. But remember, we were still only 19 at the time, and young and naive back then. At that age, you think you can conquer the world, but you soon grew up and realized that you can't. Barry and I also got married with Roger, his best man, at the wedding. We all thanked our lucky stars that day that we survived that great white shark encounter, or we would not have a future. Thanks for listening to our frightening story. I used to work at our local state fair every year. I was 16 or 17 at the time, so it was decent seasonal income for someone my age. Don't get me wrong though, the job itself was a pain in the ass. It was hot, the rides and games broke down frequently, and we were given a checklist of things to basically try, and if none of those worked, we just threw a sign on it till someone came out. That was usually next day at the earliest, or if it was close enough to the end of the season, we just left it closed. Some days I also had to be the cleaner, which meant picking up people's trash that they couldn't make to the trash can that was 6 feet in front of them, or cleaning up after a child that went on a carousel too many times. You get the point. However, the job also had its benefits. Free rides whenever I wanted, discounts on food and drinks and bartering for some of the game prizes. You also got some crazy people in there. I could go on for hours with the weird and creepy stories, but this one, of the main ones, I'll never forget. So, on most of the rides, there is a height or weight minimum and maximum. I didn't often have to deny people entry, but sometimes I did. Most of the time, it was just me telling them that their kid was too short to ride. I did have some that took a little more explaining, like the lady that I had to have a manager break down the reasons as to why she couldn't take her newborn on the roller coaster, even if she did promise to keep them in one of those wraps that goes around her. I had a lady offer to flash me if I let her kid on the ride. Mind you, I was 16 at the time, and other people flat out lied that they were tall enough, even while standing next to the sign with the height. One guy took the cake though when he wanted to take his son on this ride that was like a slingshot. It pulled you back and then lunged you forward, and it did it twice. You could get some crazy whiplash from it, but it was pretty cool. Anyways, this guy wanted to take his kid on it that was maybe 6 or so. Way too young to be on it, and as his head didn't even reach the top of the seat. So I told him he wouldn't be able to ride, and the kid looked a little upset, but complied and started getting out of the seat, no big deal. Dad then gets mad, asking why it's a problem now when he's already in the seat. I apologized and told him he didn't meet the requirements to ride, and began arguing otherwise, saying how could I possibly know he didn't. I explained that his head didn't reach the top of the seat, but that wasn't good enough. I then asked him to get off so he could see his son standing next to the height sign. After going back and forth a few more times, he finally complied. We got to the height sign, and, as expected, his son was a foot or so too short. He tried reasoning, saying he was just barely under, or would be fine if he went, but I was adamant he couldn't. I even said he should be good to try next year though, because I was frankly just done arguing with this grown-ass man. I remembered at that point he just looked at me with a slight grin, shook his head, and then walked off. I thought I was done at this point and went back to the ride. I shuffled on and off 2 or 3 groups of people when I heard a loud pop. Thinking it was just a fryer exploding or something. No, not that that was good either, but it had happened before, so I knew what to do. I turned around to check which vendor it was so I could call someone from the station phone. However, I wouldn't be so lucky to see a simple fire. It was the dad from earlier, now holding a gun in the air. People were starting to scream when they realized what was happening. This guy had left only to return with a gun, all the while still holding on to his son's hand. I quickly ran over to the phone to call security because it didn't have a line outside of the fairground, so I couldn't call 911 on it. I tried getting people off the ride and into the emergency exit, which led them around the back. I looked back to find the guy when I noticed another worker on the ground holding their leg in a pool of blood. That's when, lucky me, the guy made eye contact with me. I quickly tried to go through the exit too when he started running towards me, and he unfortunately got there before I could leave, and he quickly pulled me to the ground, pointed the gun at me, and told me to run the ride for him and his son. I begged him not to shoot, but I also begged him to not go through with this, as it was for his kid's safety. He could honestly have had some serious head or neck injury for his age, but he wouldn't listen. He started yelling and told me to get up and do as he said. So I did just that. However, with everything going through my mind, I forgot that I had pulled the emergency stop brake, so when I tried to run it, it wouldn't go. I kept trying, and the guy was losing it, more than he already was. Mind you, he is still sitting in the seat next to his son, who looks just as terrified, but somehow not in tears, like me. The dad then gets up, starts walking over to me when I for sure thought I was dead. That's when I finally remembered that stupid emergency stop. So I tried explaining it to him, the dad, so I could go and switch it back when cops finally showed up and started making their demands. This only seemed to enrage the guy more, who tried to fire at the cop, missed, and the other one tackled him to the ground. Now, the kid is crying at this point, and I'm trying to comfort him and tell him his psychotic dad is going to be okay. I gave him the candy I had in my pocket, which at least got a smile out of him, and then I had to talk to the cops about what happened. Thankfully, only one person, Tyler, was hurt, but he just had to get stitches as the bullet just grazed his leg, and we lost one of the blow-up bounce houses. The dad was arrested, and the kid was taken by the cops, but I hope he turned out okay. If he got that mad over a ride, I hope he never turned his anger on that little boy. I stopped working there that year because I didn't want to risk seeing another barrel. I work at a bank now with security cards, a locking office, and a cell phone, and I think I like it a lot more. So that, my friends, was another scary story collection, all of which of things I would not want to encounter myself. The shark one is terrifying, and it just makes me think, like, whenever we went to Florida, my sister and I, with my grandparents, this was a very long time ago, like 2004, 5, something like that. Long time ago, and while we didn't encounter any sharks, we did go swimming in the Gulf in Florida, and there were like fish and other things that you can feel like touching your legs and feet. It wasn't a problem back then. Like I as a kid, I guess I thought it was just kind of cool or whatever. But now as an adult, it's in reverse. Now I'm like, no, I don't want to go in a body of water like that and have something touch me that I don't know what it is. It's weird. I would expect it to be in reverse, but I guess maybe because I now know that there are things in there that we don't know about. I don't know. It's weird. Because I do like marine biology stuff, but the idea of going in deep water is also terrifying. I don't know. That's just me. Have you swam in large bodies of water? Are you okay with it? Would you like to? Are you not okay with it? Is it because of the things that are in the water? Yeah, I'll just go to an aquarium. Anyways, if you did enjoy this video, please do give it a like below. And if you'd like to hear more content like this, consider subscribing. We actually hit 1,900 subscribers, which is awesome. So it'd be cool to see us hit 2,000 and see where we go from there. I appreciate you guys. And lastly, don't forget to leave a comment on your thoughts or let me know who is your favorite cartoon character. Yeah, we'll go with that. And with that being said, friends, I hope you have a great day, a fantastic rest of your week, and until next time, take care.